Hello everyone, this is Spliced, and welcome to a video where I explain all the different feats I use for every single character that I use. Surprisingly enough, I never really thought about making this video ever, even since the beginning of For Honor, which is weird because feats have a huge part in this game, in the 4v4 game modes, and I never really went over the feats at all for my characters or just in general, and I figured that when the feat update came and they changed a lot of them, making a lot of them less useful and a lot more useless ones more useful, I decided I would go through my own feats and change the ones accordingly, and then also share to you guys which ones I've changed and why I did that. So we're going to be going through every single character, and I'm going to be explaining why I chose these certain feats for each character. So for the Warden, I chose Conqueror, and this feat, for those who do not know, it actually has a bit of value in skirmish and elimination, because since there's no control zones, then it would make this feat useless. But he has another ability on Conqueror, which is boost lasts longer, which are the pickups that you get, which is the damage boost, defense, and everything else like that. So they last a little bit longer, and it's very useful to use because you never know when you might actually need that little extra bit of time for it. And the other two ones is body count, and this one is obviously for Dominion, to kill the minions with. And come at me, I do not really see much value to this, as you take more damage and the renown you get from kills doesn't really have too much value. Since feats, they are great, but they don't really hold their own in a sense, meaning there's a lot of cooldown that comes with them, and the value that you get from that over the damage, extra damage that you take, I don't think has really much value. So I use these two different feats, Conqueror and Body Count. The next feat I use is Fiat Looks. For those who do not know what happened, they have changed this feat. It now does 20 damage and has a bigger pool where when you throw it, it's a bigger radius and it hits a lot more enemies a lot easier. It's also a little bit harder to get out of because it activates quite quickly, and since the area effect is quite a bit bigger, enemies can't really get out of it in time. So if you're skilled enough, you can remove all of their stamina, and it blinds them a little bit, giving you a chance for a full attack. You can also guard break them, throw them down, whatever you need to do. But I usually like to use this now because it has that extra damage boost for damage when you want to kill those enemies that are surrounding you, or if you want to take out an enemy who's running away, whatever it might be, you want to stop them from running towards you, running away. And the other two feats is Inspire, which makes your allies deal more damage, and also yourself. Soldiers fight faster, so that's pretty useful as well. This is a decent feat. This is the other one I used before Fiat Looks, but right now I'm currently using Fiat Looks because I think it's a pretty good feat. Then there's Thick Blood, which gains immunity from regular bleed damage, which is also a very powerful ability. But the reason why I don't do it is because there's not always enemies that have bleed effects, so it renders this feat completely useless, whereas this feat always has a use. Next, we're going to be going on to the third feat, which is Pugno Mortis, or Pugno Mortis. I don't really know how to pronounce that, so I apologize if I got that wrong. But this feat is pretty much like the Lawbringer's fourth feat, where he throws a bunch of little bombs. It's kind of like that. It does moderate damage, and it's just one, and then it goes on cooldown. Pretty straightforward. It just does some damage, and it is an area effect, kind of like Fiat Looks, except it doesn't blind and remove their stamina. Now, what I had before this was Second Wind, and the reason why I'm no longer using Second Wind on this character, or any of my other characters for that matter, is because this feat has been heavily nerfed, and to the point where I don't think it has much value anymore. It does heal you still, but the health value seems to be about the same, and they removed the fact that you can do it 4 times. You can only do it once now, and it has a pretty long cooldown, 30 seconds plus cooldown for every use. So I don't think it really has too much value, since the heal you get from it can be removed with one single upper heavy anyways. So I think you'll find more value in dealing damage than to try to heal yourself to tank more damage, because the time it takes for you to heal the damage, you could most likely get guard broken, and then you can take another heavy for it. And then Takedown makes your enemies fall to the ground. I personally don't think there's much value to this, because if you're getting ganged up on by enemies, you're most likely going to have Revenge, and as you guys know, that when you guard break enemies with Revenge and you throw them, they already get knocked down, so this feat doesn't really have too much value in my personal opinion. Moving on to the fourth feat, we have Morale Booster. Improve damage for you and your allies for a short duration. This gives you pretty much the damage boost ability that's on Elimination and Skirmish, on like scattered around the map. It's like that, but you can activate it whenever you want. And it has a lot of value to me because the extra damage is very useful when you're in those situations where you need to deal a lot of damage to those to enemies who are attacking you, and you want to get rid of their extra shields or anything like that if they have more health, if they're a warlord, for example. So that extra damage really helps a lot. The other ability is Stalwart Banner, which nearby allies continuously regain health. And this ability is not really too great. It's kind of subpar. It is an area of effect that constantly stays on the area and heals you gradually. And gradually is an overstatement. It heals you quite slowly, even slower than standing on a capture point. It's a pretty slow heal, so I don't think it has too much value on that. If it was a standstill ability, meaning that you just activate it and it automatically goes onto you no matter where you are, it would have a lot more value, but because it's an area of an effect and you could get knocked out of it, it doesn't really have too much value to me. Catapult is what it is. It does a lot of damage, can one-shot a lot of characters, if not all, if they're in the center of the catapult. And the reason why I'm not using this is because it's inconsistent. The time it takes for the catapult to land and deal the damage that it needs to deal might actually be your downfall, because the startup time is a little bit of time and you can actually get interrupted and take some extra damage from that. But even if it is successful, it makes a really loud noise and everyone knows it's coming, so they have a lot of time to get out of it and dodge it. So I personally don't think it's too great. It can also kill yourself as well, and it can deal a lot of damage to your teammates as well, so I don't really have too much value for that. Moving on to the Raider, we have Tireless Feat. This is a passive feat where you lose stamina at a slower rate, and it's pretty straightforward. All your abilities have a stamina cost reduction on top of the stat, the gear stat that gives yourself stamina cost reduction as well. So you can actually make your zone attacks take a lot less stamina out of your character, which is very useful because this guy has a lot of mix-ups that have to deal with the zone attack in it. So the other feat is Rush, which triggered to gain a movement speed for a short duration. At first I thought this was a pretty good idea to use because you can get away from enemies and you can also chase down enemies, but I soon realized that the speed boost isn't really too much of an increase in speed, and on top of that, it doesn't really help you get away from the enemies. They can most likely catch up to you before you even get any kind of distance from them. Also, body count is, again, it's for Dominion, and so Tireless will use it for the other game modes. Inspire, allies and yourself deal more damage, soldiers fight faster. Like I said, with the Warden, it's a pretty decent ability. It gives you a little bit of extra damage. It's quite decent, and I'm using this one instead of Marked for Death, because Marked for Death is a single target ability which reveals the target's position and lowers their attack and defense. I believe that this actually lowers their defense more than you can deal extra damage with this, but at the same time, it is a one target ability, so Inspire, you can have it for a while and you can deal damage to everyone. And then there's Bear Trap. Set a trap that damages and stops victims in their tracks. This one's actually pretty good. It removes the enemy's stamina completely, so they will be fatigued, and it does a bit of damage. I'm not sure how much damage it is, but it is pretty decent. But the reason why I'm not doing this is because most of the time it'll only hit one person, and it has a long setup time, so it's not really going to have too much value to me. Fury, raise sprint speed slightly, attack and defense greatly. This one is pretty self-explanatory. It's more of a damage and defense buff for yourself, and it's just pretty self-explanatory. Just does extra damage. And the reason why I'm not using Second Wind, again, because it got nerfed and I don't think it has too much value anymore. Battle Cry, allies and yourself deal more damage, enemy soldiers flee. This could be useful in Dominion, but personally I don't think it really does the job. It might do a little bit more damage than Fury, but Fury does give an extra bit of defense, so defense over carries damage in my opinion, since the Raider already does a great deal of damage in itself. Then we have Fire Flask. Throw a projectile, creating a fire effect over an area. This one is like the catapult, but the difference is the effect lingers, and you can use it as a stratagem to either stop enemies from coming towards you, or you can stop them from running away, whatever it might be. Either way, it does a lot of damage to a lot of enemies, and even if they just touch it, they'll take a good chunk of damage, so it is very useful to have. The reason why I'm not using Stalwart Banner is because I just don't think it has too much value to it. Also, Slippery feat. People might think that this is a pretty good feat. I personally thought it was good at the time until I realized that it actually isn't too great, because I realized that it doesn't stop the the guard breaks. What it does is it auto counter guard breaks, so when you get guard broken, you will counter guard break. The thing is with that is that it doesn't really have too much value in it, because if you're not countering their guard breaks in the first place, then it's not really going to help you, in my opinion. The enemies that guard break you, you'll have to counter guard break them anyways, and when you do that, it gives the enemies open frame to attack you without you having any chance to defend anyways. So even if you have this activated, you're still going to give the enemies that small window frame for them to attack you. So I prefer Fire Flask because I can do that extra bit of damage, and I can use it as a way to get out or a way to stop them from getting away from me. Moving on to the Berserker. The Berserker is pretty straightforward in my opinion. It has a lot of damage going with this class, and then a lot of feats to back up that damage as well. We're going to start off with the first one, which is Bounty Hunter, which is a passive. Gain health and stamina when you kill another hero. This passive is extremely good in my opinion. I think it's one of the best feats, and I wish a lot of other classes had it too, because it is a feat that kept me alive a lot in gank situations. Whenever you kill another hero, your stamina goes back to full completely, no matter what you're at. If you're out of stamina or you're low on stamina, you'll go back to full completely, which is really useful. And you gain health, of course. This health is about like 20% of your maximum health, something like that, but it is still very useful to have, because that 20% can keep you alive more than you think. Then there's also the other two feats, which is Rush. Again, don't think the speed boost really helps. And Stun Trap, which set a trap that stuns enemies. This is actually pretty useful in Dominion. I just don't think it has any other value elsewhere, as you gotta wait for enemies to get to you, and what better way to wait than to be on a capture point in Dominion. Doom Banner. Nearby enemies have less powerful attack and defense. Now this one is interesting. It has the biggest area of effect than any other ability in the game, and it's really wide, but the thing about it is that it is a single area placement, so when you place it down, you can't move it or anything like that. You have to fight in that area. What it does is it pretty much makes the enemy's defense go down quite significantly, where your light attacks will do, I would say, about 50 to 75% extra damage per hit. So that would make the same for a strong attack as well, and that's very powerful for the Berserker, who already does a high amount of damage. It is what it is. It's a level 2 feat. It's not the best, but it is very useful if the enemies are deciding to fight you in it. You can also use this as a stratagem to stop them from chasing you if they want to come out of it, and you can use it to make some distance between each other, whatever you want to take with it. And the other two things is Bear Trap. Again, it's a slow time, so I don't think it has too much value. And Revenge Attacks. Now, a lot of people like to use this ability. And I'm not going to say that it's a bad ability, because it is a very good one, but when you're being attacked by multiple people, you'll be getting revenge really quickly anyways, so it makes this thing completely nullified and pointless, because you have to attack to fill the revenge meter, and when you're being ganked on, you're usually on the defensive anyways, so you're going to be getting revenge really quickly. But if you're in 1v1 situations a lot, and you want to be in those 1v1 situations instead of being in gank situations, then yes, the revenge attacks is very good, because you'll be getting revenge within the first 20 seconds of your fight if you're being very persistent with your attacks. Next, we're going to move on to Sharpened Blade. So they pretty much said that they removed the ability of Feats stacking with your gear stats, and they're their own damage. But the thing with Sharpened Blade is that it is still a very prominent ability. In fact, it is probably one of the most powerful abilities in the game, as it adds just that much more bleed damage to your weapons, and it stacks really, really well over the course of damage. For example, if you were to use a zone attack, that's 4 hits if they all connect, of course. 4 hits plus the bleed damage on top does an insane amount of damage, and it still does do an insane amount of damage even after the so-called nerf that they did for the character, for the class, and all the feats. The other thing is Fury. This used to be what my original setup was, but I decided to choose Sharpened Blade because the damage just outweighs the defense and attack that Fury gives you. Throwing Axe, they lowered the damage as well on this, so it no longer does, I believe, the 70 damage that it did. I believe it was 70. Either way, they lowered the damage now, and it's lower than that, and it doesn't really have too much value. Also, I also found out that I also realized that the consistency of it hitting the enemies is really inconsistent for some reason. I'm not sure why. So that's why I use Sharpened Blade. It's one of the strongest abilities in the game. Berserker, raise sprint speed, defense, and attacks greatly. No stack. So this does not stack with Fury, but it is one of the more powerful abilities in the game. What it does is it makes your character run really fast. You have a lot of defense and a lot more attack damage. When you use this in par with Sharpened Blade, even though it says it does not stack, your natural damage does go up, so it will increase with the Sharpened Blade, of course, because extra bleed damage is extra bleed damage. Berserker is really powerful. There is Fire Flask, of course, but I don't think that is too much value with the Berserker, because the Berserker needs to move around a lot, and there's a good chance you're going to be running into your own Fire Flask, so that's not really a good idea. Fear itself, though, enemies around you have lower stamina, regeneration, and defenses. This is actually a really, really powerful ability. In fact, I've been debating going between Berserker and Fear itself a lot, but the reason why I'm choosing Berserker is because I want that extra defense for myself, and the attack damage that you get from Berserker is pretty much the same as lowering the enemy's defenses. Of course, they have lower stamina regeneration though, so that's also very useful, so you guys can choose from that. Moving on to the Centurion. Centurion has the Bounty Hunter just like the Berserker, which is really, really good. I'm really grateful that the Centurion actually has this ability. He was able to stay alive quite a bit with it, but the problem is that he's not a full assassin, so he doesn't have those full dodge that the other assassins have. So I can't really stay alive too well because I can't dodge too well with this character. But he does have Bounty Hunter, so it does give me that extra HP, which really helped a lot in a lot of situations before. The other ones is Body Count, which is for Dominion, and Rush, which again, don't think there's too much value. Haymaker. Probably the most powerful ability that this character has. Passive, punches, kicks, and throws now deal damage. So as you guys may know, if you have or have not played Centurion, when you do any of your jabs or your kicks, or if you do your guard break throw, anything like that, or if you guard break them and then you throw them, it does a little bit of damage. I think it's something around 10 damage, something like that. And even if it is lower than 10 damage, this extra bit of damage every single time, there's so many times when you're going to be jabbing and kicking your enemy with the Centurion, so it's just a lot of pressure damage that you're going to be doing to the character, to the enemies, and it's just, you're going to eventually kill them if they're on the defensive. So it's really good at breaking the turtle meta in a way, and I personally think that is one of the best abilities. Then there's Inspire, which gives you more damage, but again, Haymaker is good damage in itself. Centurion's March, gain unlimited stamina for a short time. Doesn't really have too much value unless if you're in a 1v1, but as you guys know, the Centurion has quite a bit of stamina. Either he has a lot of stamina or his abilities cost next to nothing, because if you guys were to try, if you guys try in a custom game to just hold down strong attack and feint it over and over again, you could probably pull it off like 15 times before he runs out of stamina, which is absolutely insane. So this thing has pretty much no value to it whatsoever. Next we have Sharpened Blade, which of course in itself is really good damage. And you guys might have noticed that I have never used this ability up until now, and that's because I used to use Second Wind, which recovers health, but unfortunately it was nerfed, which in my opinion, I'm not really too happy about that, because I do think that the ability was a little powerful, but now that it is super nerfed to the point where I don't think it has any value anymore whatsoever. This character has a really small health pool, so I don't think it'll have the ability to stay alive, so I'm going to have to rely on raw damage and deal the damage like a Berserker. Unfortunately, I don't have the dodging ability that the Berserker has though, so it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out. And the other ability, which is Pugio or Pugio, I can't really pronounce that again. It's a projectile that deals low damage and traps an enemy for a short time. The problem with this ability, which is really powerful in a 1v1 situation, in fact I think it is broken in a 1v1 situation, is because what it does is it staggers the enemy and deals the same amount of damage as around a heavy for the Centurion. But the thing with it is that it staggers the enemy long enough for you to do a charged jab, which is a guaranteed charged jab, which will of course go into a charged heavy, into a charged jab, which will knock them down, allowing you to go for another top heavy, which is the Eagle's Talons, and that is 3 hits, which is most likely going to be half, if not more than half, of some of the character's HP pool, and that is a lot of damage for free. On top of that, there's no way of you seeing when it comes. It'll just hit you almost immediately. But in 1v2, 1v3, and 1v4 situations, doesn't really have too much value in my opinion. I think Sharpened Blade is the way to go. Then we have Phalanx, which is a new ability which grants a shield to all alive teammates, yourself included. This is the ability where when you grab a shield in skirmish or elimination, you get a full HP bar of defense, and it is into a form of an ability. The cool thing about this is that when you use it, it gives it to all your teammates no matter where they are. It's a global buff, and it is very useful to have in team fights, and also just for yourself as well. It's very useful because it's a whole HP bar, so it's technically a full HP heal as well. Then there's Stalwart Banner. Don't really think it has too much value in my opinion. And then there's Catapult, which call a catapult strike to deal massive damage over an area. I personally think Phalanx is better because you can stay alive longer, and this class definitely needs it. And finally, we are moving into the Lawbringer. Lawbringer has the Conqueror as its first feat, which I think is the best way to go. There is Harsh Judgment, which reduces a target's stamina for a short moment, and it is a very powerful ability in a 1v1 situation. You guys might disagree, but when it's been used on me by other Lawbringers, I can say that it's very hard to get combos going, because when you run out of that stamina, the chance of you regaining that stamina is really hard. It goes up really slowly, allowing the Lawbringer to push its advance on you, which is really hard for you to get out of. Then we have Body Count, which again is for Dominion and is very good for the Lawbringer. It's very good minion clear. On our second feat, this one is a 50-50 between the Righteous Deflection, which is a passive parry to gain high damage reduction for a short amount of time, which is very useful if you're good at parrying. You get a lot of damage reduction, and with all the stat nerfs and gear stat nerfs and revenge nerfs and everything that came, you're gonna need a lot more defense than you actually need. So this ability is very useful, and I'm still going to be using it today. Despite the fact that there is Fiat looks, I don't think that it has more value over the Righteous Deflection. Staying alive is #1 priority. And then of course we have Juggernaut, which is toggleable. You are slowed and gain high damage reduction. This ability used to not work in the beginning, but it does now, and I've been testing it, and it gives a lot of defense. You're slowed, meaning you don't run really fast, and that's fine because you're going to want to use it when you're ready to just hold your ground. And you get a lot of damage reduction, meaning a full up top heavy from a raider only does like half a bar of damage, which is crazy. So this is actually a very good ability. The problem with it is that it does not last. It does last, but it can run out, so if the enemies are being very defensive against you, you can lose this ability and then you're out of defense. Whereas the Righteous Deflection, each time you deflect or each time you parry, I should say, you get a good defense bonus, which is around the same as the Juggernaut in my opinion, for a good 8 seconds, and it can reset as soon as you parry another attack, so it's very powerful in my opinion. Then we have this ability again, the single bomb ability, which you throw an explosive, deals moderate damage in an area, and the reason why I'm using this one over the second wind, again, because it got nerfed. So I'm going to be resorting to this ability, which is the same as Igneous Ember, which I'll be getting to in a sec. And the reason why I don't have protected revive, your revive is uninterruptible and grants health, is because I am a team player, of course. I like to help my teammates when I can, but I like to be more prepared for myself when the situation comes, because I like to rely on myself a little bit more than my teammates, because of course if they've lost their 1v1, I'm not sure if they're going to be too much of a help in the next fight that is to come. That is not to say that I don't revive. I like to help people when I can, but I do believe that preparing for yourself is a lot more value if you know what you're doing. And then of course going to Igneous Ember, several grenades that deal moderate damage over an area. This is the most powerful ability the Lawbringer has to offer, because it is a very powerful ability in itself, does really good damage, and you have a lot of these grenades. They regenerate quite quickly, so you can use them a lot in a single fight, and they turn the tide of battle really quickly. And then of course we have Catapult. It is a slow, high damage ability. Don't really think it has more value over the Igneous Ember. And then we have Regenerate, which is a passive, regenerate your health when out of combat. This is about the same HP regen as when you're holding in a base in Dominion, and it's pretty decent, but it's when you're out of combat, and you don't really need to worry about being out of combat in this game, because you're going to be fighting people for a long time anyways, and the HP regen isn't really the best anyways, so in my opinion, I don't really think Regenerate is the way to go. That's why I chose Igneous Ember. So that's it for all my feats, guys. I hope you guys learned something. I really hope I did help you guys learn something about these feats, and maybe it'll change some of your decisions for what you're going to be using. Of course, this is just the ones I use. You guys are free to use what you want. This is just, in my opinion, what I think is best for myself. Of course, it is also on playstyle, but anyways, hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.